I'm Warren Sprouse. I'm host of the Bible Forum. We meet every Sunday night right here from 8 to 10 p.m. We look at life through a biblical lens, and we generally solve all the world's problems in 2 hours or less. Tonight I want to talk to you about the church. Where's the church headed? Is the church heading for persecution? In a word, the answer is yes. Pastor Carl Gallups has written a new book entitled Be Thou Prepared. It's the equipping of the church for persecution and times of trouble. And he says every nation that has eventually and finally either enslaved its people or not enslaved its people, or Nazi Germany, just eliminated and exterminated whole sections of the undesirable population. And they didn't begin with gun control. They began with a marginalization of that population. In Hitler's case, it was the Jews. In Western world, it's Christianity. Pastor Gallups is suggesting that at the end, it will be true believers who bear the brunt of persecution, not with jail time, but with social rejection. Perhaps with the imposition of some licensure or the revoking of tax exemption for the organization, or perhaps charging churches real estate taxes. Do you know why we don't tax church real estate today? Because churches provide a greater benefit to the society than would the taxes they collect. Yeah. Church is a leveling influence, a godly influence on society. People who go to church are not drunks laying in a street. They don't get AIDS. They don't put a drain on the social services of the community. Church takes care of their own. But the Christian wants to work and will. I can't find a job. Heard a story last week about a father who had a child graduated high school. This is in the old days. And she needed to get work. And she spent a couple of weeks she couldn't find work. And she would complain about it. I just can't find work. Daddy, what should I do? He said, tomorrow you go out and find a job. And don't come home without one. And that day she came home with a job. And so can you. But that's not possible. Yes, it is. It won't be the one you want, but it'll be a job. And who is it that gets the job they want? The one who's willing to work. And while you're working and you're doing a good job, meaning that you show up on time, you don't lie, you don't cheat, you don't steal, you do what you're told, you demonstrate that you're a good employee. And if your boss doesn't promote you or give you something else to do, or you can't learn something else, one of your customers might. Or just in the course of business, you may run across something else. And little by little, you work your way up, and in 10 years' time, you've got a real job, and you're making, and everything's fine. In the meantime, you've learned a lot. Who thinks like that today? Nobody under the age of 30. I can tell you that right now. We are living in desperate times, and it's going to get worse. Christians will begin to be seen as the problem for everything. Their crime will be pointing the finger and saying, you are a sinner and you need Jesus. That will be their crime. How dare you? And it may come to the place where that penalty will be jail. You'll violate the laws, handing out a tract on a city street. You can't do that. You don't have a license. Any and every other person can do it, but you can't do the track thing. Because you're daring to say that that's a bad person. You're not allowed to do that. We are scared to death that one day the government will come and take our guns. We fear the day when the government will know where we live and might limit our freedoms. Well, the United Nations already has a plan for that. It's under their, what do they call it, goals, the initiative, 2030 initiative or whatever. It's in a document called Goal 16.9. And they're planning to fit us all with a biometric chip that would form an ID. So no matter where we go or what we do, the government and their agents will be able to determine who we are and where we belong. We're getting there. It's already happening. We can actually see that from here. 30 years ago, this was science fiction. Today, we understand it. We are already doing it to children in the hospital. A biometric chip. We do it to our animals. You can have it done to yourself if that's what you want. We are living in a dangerous era. Right now, one of the major enemies of our society is running out of money. It's called Russia. And Putin is taking a strategic gamble, depleting the Kremlin's last reserve funds to cover a budget that's paying for the escalation of war in Syria. He says our policies are not frozen. They adapt to circumstances. That's his justification. We have to do what we have to do. The deficits around the world, the Western world, are astronomical. We have countries that are, for all intents and purposes, bankrupt. Greece, Italy, Spain. Our dollar is still the global economy, global currency, and it isn't worth anything. But it's still worth more than theirs. Where is that going to lead us? We honestly don't know. But as a Christian, our responsibility is to stand up and say who we are and why we're here. And as we do that, we will face persecution. I look for the day, should I live long enough, when it will become difficult to meet together as we do now in buildings around the community. I think that will actually be a better time. I think that'll be a stronger time for the church. 3 families meeting together in a home somewhere. 3 other families somewhere else. And one person from one of those 3 family groups interacting with the persons from the other groups and so forth and so on, and networking in informal ways, strengthening each other. It's not about having a great big building and a great big budget and all the missionaries. It's about building people up in the Lord, and that happens in small groups. It doesn't happen in great big churches. And so it will be a strengthening time. But there will be persecution. Not being thrown in jail, just being limited in our ability to say and do and get around. And that will continue until Jesus comes. And then it'll get worse. What are you going to do between now and then? What are you going to do to prepare your heart and your life and your children and your family and maybe your church for that day. You think about it. Think about the day when you can't go on Amazon.com and just buy a book for your Kindle that's Christian. What are you going to do? Will you have anything you can read? Will you have a Bible? Will it be a Bible that's actually a Bible or something somebody created for you? A lot of questions. But I believe one day Jesus will come and he will take us out of here, and then all hell will break loose. I don't know how far the church will go toward that end before it happens. The Bible says it'll be less than 7 years. And so the implication that I have, or that I take, is that we will get really, really close. And I think we're close enough now. I think that if the Lord were to take the church out, this whole thing would come unglued so fast you wouldn't be able to keep track of it. Chaos would ensue immediately. And somebody would have to stand up somewhere and take control. And that's all the Bible's talking about when it talks about the Great Tribulation. Read it. In the book of Revelation at the end, it'll tell you all about it.